Good evening. This is the Thursday, June 1st, 2017 regular meeting of the Morro Bay Harbor Advisory Board. It's being held in the Veterans Memorial Building here in Morro Bay. And we have a quorum. As a matter of fact, all of the advisory board members are here this evening. And so we'll call the meeting to order and begin, please, with a moment of silence. Thank you. And the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Dana?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is advisory board and liaison. Our Councilman Makowetsky is here this evening, our liaison, so it's announcements and presentations. And we'll start down at your end, Dana.
No announcement.
Okay. Neil?
None for me.
Bill?
Yes, I have a kind of a sad announcement. We're going to have to forego doing the fireworks in the city of Morro Bay July 4th, 2017. We were denied a coastal permit to hold the fireworks, and due to the 4 weeks notice before July 4th, we've decided to refund everyone's money and to give up the fight. I'm sorry that some people have already made plans. We've already advertised it. There's actually an ad in the paper today. There'll be another ad. But due to the time constraints, we're going to have to forego trying to make this happen. If you have any concerns, send an email to our website, and I can explain it to you in private. And if you did donate money, which I do have some, please let me know, and I'll try to get it back to you. Thank you.
And Bill, that's the Friends website?
That is correct. And that website is www.friendsofthemBHD.org.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
Nothing.
Jeremiah?
Thank you, Ron. I do have a message I just want to make an announcement that the Morro Bay Commercial Fishermen's Organization had an officer and director meeting today, and we did just authorize some donations, and I'd like to announce the people that we will be donating to. San Luis Obispo Free Medical Clinic, $1,000. San Luis Obispo Women's Shelter, $1,000. Options Family Services of Morro Bay, $1,000. Jack's Helping Hand, $1,000. Hearst Cancer Research Center, French Hospital Medical Center Foundation, $1,000. Loaves and Fishes, $1,000. Senior Nutrition Program of San Luis Obispo County, $1,000. Food Bank Coalition of San Luis Obispo County, $1,000. Central Coast Kidney Foundation, $2,000. And these are monies that we traditionally give out every year and have been for decades. This year and the previous 4 or 5 years, the resources that we were able to expend in this case came from the Ed Ewing Memorial Fund that Morro Bay Commercial Fishermen's Organization is in charge of administering. And then I would like to add that from the Al French Memorial Fund, junior lifeguards were approved for $1,600 and 2 scholarships to Morro Bay High School, a total of $3,000. And thank you.
Gene?
No, nothing.
So, Jeremiah, by my count, that's $14,600 in donations
That's correct. And actually, our usual donations, as I said, for decades now, I don't even know when the donations began, generally range between 10 and 18,000. And so this year we're right there with what we usually donate.
Okay. Councilman?
Now, I'll wait till a question comes up.
Okay.
When it comes up on the item, comes up on the agenda.
Okay. Well, you could share it. If you have an announcement, you're welcome to share it. Okay. All right. Okay, so that brings us to the public comment period. Public comment for anything that is not on this evening's agenda, or if there is an item later in the agenda for which someone cannot stay, please approach the podium. Seeing none, we move on. That brings us to the consent calendar, and we don't have one. So can you, Lori, and not to put you on the spot in any way, please, can you tell us when the minutes might be available?
At the next meeting
Okay.
in July.
Okay, thank you. Good. Okay, so then the next category is reports and appearances, and before the Harbor Department, I'd like to make the public and certainly the boaters in our area aware that the federal government through CFR 33 and 46, effective August 22, 2016, made some modifications to fire extinguisher standards. And they're on the screen right now. If we could switch over. That's a brief summary of the changes that were made. They have not so much to do with, can you leave that back up just for a sec? Thanks. Thank you. Just give me a second. They have not so much to do with the nature of the extinguishers themselves, but there has been a change in how fire extinguishers are rated. Traditionally, in the marine industry, they were rated by the United States Coast Guard, and Type 1s, Type 2s, and various configurations. And effective August 22, that's being phased out by the federal government and being replaced by a UL, Underwriters Laboratories rating. And so now, please go to the next one. And there are the classifications of the different kinds of how fire extinguishers are rated by the nature of the fire, or I should say by the nature of the source of the fire. So when you see a letter A or a letter B or a letter C or a letter D on a fire extinguisher, or if you're asking yourselves what kind of fire extinguisher do I need on board my boat or in the galley or in the machinery spaces, this is a guide. This information is readily available online, and I'm confident the Harbor Department would be able to help you as well. And the next slide, please. So the certification labels are found on the sides of an extinguisher in a location more or less like the image on the upper left-hand corner. And each of the other three images are labels that show both the traditional United States Coast Guard size and type rating for a fire extinguisher, and up above it is the new UL rating. And I can't see it from here, but hopefully the folks that are watching this can. And again, if you want additional information, if you're a boater here in Morro Bay, I'll sick you on the Harbor Department. Or you're welcome to email me if you'd like through my city email address, which is on the city website, and we can provide you with some additional information. Thank you. That's it. Oh, sorry.
I was just curious, Ron, for those who don't have, is this an upgrade, so will people's old extinguishers be obsolete in the marine industry?
Once your old, if you will, extinguishers, presuming that they are still in good operating condition, are no longer in good operating condition, either because they have lost pressure on their pressure gauge or because they've been used, the pins have been pulled and they've been triggered, a replacement extinguisher will be the new UL type.
Okay, so we have ours serviced.
That means what you just got done telling me is that you folks have the commercial fishermen that you're talking about are using non-disposable extinguishers,
Correct,
which need to be serviced, as you folks know, annually, and those you can continue to use. I understand that those are grandfathered until they become inoperable.
okay. Thanks, Ron, very much.
Okay, so Harbor Department status report, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, running down the list, recent department activity, just our general statistics. For the month of May, roughly, were 6 emergency responses, 105 calls for service, 36 assists, 8 enforcement actions, and 8 weather hazards, probably gale, wind conditions, if spring was holding out as it usually does. Next item, lifeguard supervisor and reserve harbor patrol officer Kyle Schaefer. We're both gladdened and saddened at the same time. Kyle's been with us about 7 years now, came as a lifeguard, probably came up through the junior lifeguard program. Then hired him on as a lifeguard for a few years, and when our previous lifeguard supervisor moved on, he stepped up into the position. He's been doing that for probably 4 seasons now, might be 5. He also works up at the fire department as a part-time reserve firefighter. He works on our boats as a harbor patrol officer, like I said, and he has landed a job full-time at Port St. Louis, which is great, which is the great part, the gladdened part. The saddened part is we're losing him. We're looking into whether we can still keep him around part-time. Being full-time and part-time at the same time is going to be a little difficult, but we wish Kyle well in his endeavors. Fortunately, he's not going very far, and we'll still see him around. And I hope to get him back at some point. I'm pledging to get him back. Another fortunate thing that occurred in our staffing was in the last few months we've had a retired state park ranger lifeguard, Robert Tolan, who worked probably more than 2 decades down in Oceano Dunes area, has been with state parks for probably close to 30 years. Started coming around our office looking for a little something to do on the retirement side, and so we were starting to bring him on as a reserve harbor patrol officer, and that's when Kyle was in the final running for making Port St. Louis, and he got it. So Robert was able to step right in the middle of our academy, which I'll speak about in a minute, and he's going to be taking over supervision of our lifeguard program. Because of PERS, the Public Employee Retirement System rules, he's a retired annuitant. He can only work up to 1 year, so we're going to keep him this year. We've got some couple good staffers on board this year as head lifeguards, one of which we'll be looking to train and bring on as our lifeguard supervisor next year. So Robert will be pretty instrumental in getting us from this year to the next year as we lose Mr. Schaefer. So good news, bad news, good news story there. So we wish Kyle good luck, and if you see Robert around, welcome into the fold. He's a great guy. We've worked with him a lot in the last 20 years, and just incidents up and down the coast. Being a state park ranger, he's not stuck down there. He's been up and down the coast, so Robert's been a good asset for the county. Other things that have occurred in the Bay. On May 10th, we responded to a body in the water down at Bayfront Marina. Unfortunately, Mr. Dowdy was the first on scene and was instrumental in getting us down there and bringing in the fire department and sheriff and getting the body removed from the water. Local liveaboard down there at the marina. Unfortunate accident, so that was not a good part of the month. On the 18th, we responded to a vessel without power about 1.5 miles out of the harbor entrance. As you know, rockfish fishing season is opened, and there's a little bit of salmon being caught, so there's a fair amount of boaters out there. And with boaters come boating engine problems, so these guys ran out of power outside the harbor and got them back, no problem. On the 21st, we responded out to the Rock parking lot for a climber going up the north side of the Rock. They were located, escorted down, and then cited, I believe, by either state parks or the city of Morro Bay, for probably state parks for climbing the Rock. Fortunately ended well. As you know, some of those climbs don't end so well. And lastly, on the 24th, fishing vessel Lady Maxine although it probably hasn't fished in a good 5 or 6 years. Started taking on water on a mooring. We were alerted to it. It had about a 45-degree list, a fair amount of water on board. We were able to get pumps on it, get it pumped out, locate the owner, and the owner's hopefully taking care of the vessel. It's a 1970s wooden boat. Coast Guard's taking an interest in that as well because it's fairly well deteriorated, so we'll see where that goes as time goes on. On the dredging front, as you've probably noticed, the 200-foot ship that was gracing our harbor for about a month is now gone. The Yaquina's taken off for back up north. They had a good 27, 28 days here, but their tour duty is over, and they got a lot of good quantities moved. I don't have, probably at the next meeting I'll report on what quantities they removed and where. They have the survey, the Corps of Engineers has their survey boat here this week doing that post-dredge surveying, so we'll get a good idea of what they removed. I think they did a pretty darn good job based on what we've seen, and they always do, which is good. So we'll see what those numbers come in at. And Otna Design Build, the company here was doing the pipeline job before the Yaquina came. They've been waiting for the Yaquina to go. They're getting back up and running. They're starting to reestablish their pipeline out to the nearshore disposal area. They've got about 25% of the quantity removed down towards the end of Morro Bay, down by the A2 mooring area. Quantity-wise, I couldn't tell you the numbers off the top of my head. Probably a good 4 to 7 days of dredging in that area, and then the same, that high spot off Tidelands Park, there's about 25% left there, so they'll have another good 4 to 7 days. So 10 days to 2 weeks of dredging kind of at the south end of the harbor, and then they go to the sand trap area, which is in between the inner groin jetty and the south jetty, which is, just as its name implies, is a sand trap to keep sand from building up in the harbor channel there in the harbor entrance. They've probably got a little over 100,000 cubic yards to move out of there, so they'll be spending a good amount of time there. So we look forward to them getting up and operational again and get the rest of those quantities removed. And the pipe on the beach, they're probably going to end up leaving that out on the sand spit until after snowy plover season is over, because they're really the only way to get it out is going to be, especially after the summer and all the sand buildup and wind-blown sand that's covered it, they're going to have to bring heavy equipment out there and get it back out of the sand. So that'll be what they'll hopefully be doing come into September, beginning October. Recent City Council activity, special meeting on May 9th, the budget study session. I think that was session number 1. The council received the first draft of the whole city's general fund and all the special fund budgets for 2017-18. And provided their input. We, as staff, went back, came back to a budget study session on May 23rd with the changes. Got a little more input from the council. Everything's looking pretty good for adoption next week, right? Yeah, 13th. A few more changes to that. Harbor budget's balanced, not with a lot left over to spare, but we are looking okay and anticipating a little extra reserve of money coming in at the end of this year if the projections continue on with the way revenues and expenditures are going. So that's all good on the budget front. Special May 12th meeting, the council, it was a notice meeting because all the council was there to do some mandatory emergency operations center training for policymakers. So the fire department put that on up at the EOC and the rec center. Just went through several hours of just policy and logistics of how you respond when you open the emergency operations center and what everybody's roles are. So that took place in good training there. And then at their May 23rd meeting, council adopted a resolution approving some major modifications to the conditional use permit at Rose's Landing at 725 Embarcadero. As you know, it's primarily retail downstairs and then restaurant upstairs. They're converting most of the restaurant space upstairs to hotel room use to, I think, 9 or 10 rooms upstairs, and then they'll put a lobby on the downstairs. They'll be doing a lot of other public access improvements. Their slip project is getting approved. It's been a challenge going through coastal with that, with all the eelgrass issues, as you know. But it looks like they're moving forward and getting their coastal permits and then come back and get their building permits. So look forward to those changes coming. Probably, I'm guessing construction, they'll start into it in the fall, winter when the season's slowed down a little bit. So look forward to that. And as I previously mentioned, with Mr. Schaefer leaving in our Lifeguard Academy, we did our 2 weeks of our annual Lifeguard Academy that we put on in conjunction with the Recreation Department and with San Luis Obispo County for their lifeguard program up in Cayucas. It's a 40-hour course designed, again, for new hire ocean lifeguards. It gives them all the training they need to get a basic certification in ocean lifeguarding. Coupled with that comes another 16 to 20 hours of on-the-job training, and then they can really take that certificate anywhere around the country, around the world, and use it if they wish. It's 2 Friday evenings, starting about 6 to 9 p.m., and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday, both classroom, testing, working with equipment statically, and then a lot of out in the field, on the beach, a lot of swimming, a lot of running for parents of the kids that go through those, myself included. My daughter went through. It's great because the kids come home at the end of the day and they're done. And they eat dinner and go to bed. So great training, a lot of good kids. Got an interesting new wave of kids, mostly coming through Morro Bay High School, but a couple coming from other places with the county. And it's just a nice, another new group of kids that we'll probably see around for 5, 6, 7 years as they make their way out of high school and into college. And so we'll see how that goes. So lifeguard started on the beach last weekend with Memorial Day. They'll be on weekends only until the week of May, or June 19th, I believe, is when we put them on the beach full-time. And then you'll see them there until Labor Day weekend, and then part-time again after that. Weekends only until Harbor Festival is when we generally keep them. And sometimes a little beyond, depending on the weather. If we have great Indian summer, we'll keep them on a little longer. On the fishing front, I can let Jeremiah fill in if he's got anything else, but Little Market squid have showed up here locally. We had a few boats and still have a couple boats poking around, getting some squid and commercially viable numbers, so it's nice to see that back. With that usually brings white sea bass and a lot of recreational fishermen out trying to get those, so we've seen a little bump in the numbers there. They've been unloading kind of sporadically at Giovanni's and at Santa Monica Seafood Dock, but it's good to see that coming again. I think Dungeness crab season's still going okay. They're getting a few crab out here. Season closes the end of June. A lot of those guys will start transitioning over. Salmon, like I say, there's been a few salmon. I don't think there's anything terribly commercial numbers out here. A few guys poking away at it. And then folks like Jeremiah and others gearing up for albacore season and heading up north. So probably see a lot of folks disappearing over the next month for that. Anything to add on that, Jeremiah?
No, the water currently is out at 135 degrees, and it's about 500 or 600 miles. And let's see, 330, 350, 400 or 500 miles. But nothing happening yet on the albacore front. And that being said, I just want to say thank you very much, and probably won't see everybody here until the fall, as we'll be leaving, and I believe one of our 2 alternates will be filling in while we're gone.
Okay. Safe travels. Have a good trip. Good luck. And then on the past event list, May 5th, 6th, or May 5 to 7 was the Cruising Morro Bay Car Show. I think it started with a little drive around on Friday evening, and then Saturday and Sunday. A little blustery. I think it rained one of those days. Saturday, Sunday had a little rain, kind of some inclement weather, but good amount of people, a lot of cars. I know I brought my son down. We poked around for a few hours. Pretty interesting. Lots of different variety, man. Everything from Jeeps and 4-wheel drives to the old Mustangs to trucks and everything in between. So great show. May 13th was the Miracle for Mile Kids Run, 10K run over from Morro Bay out to Cayucas. Another great event. Several thousand people, I think, partook in that. May 16th, we were the finishing stage of Stage 3 for the Amgen Tour of California bicycle race. As you saw, that I think started in Pismo and bounced around the county and then ended in Morro Bay in the afternoon. Came through the state park and then down the water, quick down to the waterfront, back up Harbor Street, and finished up kind of up in the city hall zone. So that was a great event, well attended, and didn't see any crashes, which is always good. You never know on some of those guys going around those corners. May 20th was National Safe Boating Week. We participated, I believe, on Saturday for that. We had the Friends of Morro Bay set up on the North T Pier. We had the Coast Guard Reserves, the county sheriff with their rescue patrol boat. Of course, us and the Coast Guard Morro Bay, we had tours of our facilities and shooting off our water cannon. Free, I think the auxiliary had a free life jacket program that we were participating in. Bring in your own life jacket. You could get a new one in exchange. Guys, anything to add, Bill, on that? Or did I catch everything we had on that?
No, it was a good event, and that lifeguard exchange program for the Life Vest was very, very popular. So, yeah.
In past years, we've participated in that, but we've usually had it down at Tidelands or even at the launch ramp, and the participation is always kind of low, and you get the boaters down there, but not a lot of public. This time, I believe it was the Mermaid and Pirate Parade was the same day, right? So we had all those people kind of finishing up from that and in the area, and brought a lot of kids down, I think, because of that. So I think the timing was good, and the location was a lot better because we just have a lot more pedestrian-type traffic. So that was good. And then May 27th, 29th was the 61st annual Morro Bay Art in the Park up at the city park, all weekend long over Memorial Day weekend. Again, well attended, and I think we'll see its brother or sister event over Labor Day weekend in the same location. And then on the upcoming event front, other than summer and everything everybody does on the summertime, in the month of June, there's multiple birding and hiking opportunities that the Morro Bay Museum of Natural History is putting on, so you can give them a call or look on their website for more information. Any questions? Yeah.
What happened, or is there any additional news about the dismasted sailboat that was brought in?
I don't have any more information on that, no.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of information were you looking for?
I was just wondering what happened.
They were on the regatta from San Francisco to Santa Barbara, I believe.
And we're,
Laura, you know any more scuttlebutt on that?
was dismasted
Yes.
how?
10 to 12 foot seas.
Yeah, I mean, he got caught out there in the, as gale winds we had here for a couple of days, and you go offshore a little bit, and it's even worse, so.
This is a 24-foot boat, and they've been in the regatta several times, so they knew what they were doing.
Any other questions for Eric?
This has to do with the April meeting. We went over the Harbor Advisory Board work program for the council for the goals and objectives. I was just curious where we talked about consideration of a fee-based RV and boat trailer storage temporarily over in the Triangle lot. We talked about moving that up. Has that progressed at all?
So we took your input on at the May meeting, May 4th or 5th, changed some of the things around, looked at the quarters of implementation and moved those numbers up. So I put that in fact, just today I sent that up to our acting city manager, Craig Schmallinger, for incorporation because it's going to council on the 13th for, I believe it's 13th. Does that sound right, Matt? Yep. Yeah. 13th, it's going up for adoption, consideration and adoption at the city council. So once they adopt that, we'll be green lighted to start going on all those items.
Any other questions for Eric? Eric, I have a question regarding the dredging. If you know, how many cubic yards per hour can, I always sublimate the name of the folks, Ahtna, can they pump from the south end of the bay, approximately?
I think when they were at the north end, the numbers, which is when we're talking to them mostly about that, they were in the 400 cubic yards per hour range. So I think down at the south end, they were down in the 300, maybe a little above 3. So fairly low volume because of the distance and the size of the equipment.
Okay, and then just a brief administrative comment. The third page of the staff report is, quote, status of pending HAB recommendations, end quote. And the last item, City Council to involve the Harbor Advisory Board directly in the consideration and incorporation of Measure D into the general plan and local coast plan update. The reference, as far as status is concerned, is agenda item C5 from tonight. We'll get to that. Gene.
Yeah, an additional comment on the dredging. In the A2 area, which is south of the city boat launch, most of that area is like 20 feet deep at low tide. And just recently we inspected a mooring and it was 10 feet deep at low tide. So, and this is not out in the channel, which always has a high spot, but this is in the middle of the field. So there's been a lot more sand that's filled in through there. So there may be quite a bit of dredging back there.
Does the scope of work include the mooring field or just the channel?
No, just the channel. I mean, there's an overdredge amount that the typically contractor will want to go after because it's pay dirt. You know, the more they move, the more money they make. And so they typically go right up to the edges of the dredging prism or the dredging outline, and that can result in a little bit of benefit to us because some of it will come sloughing off from the edges, and it could pull a little bit out of the mooring area, but I wouldn't suspect it's going to cure any of the problems that we may be seeing.
Just a comment.
Yeah, wow, that's a big change. Okay, with the board's approval, brings us to business items. I'd like to move C6 up to the first position. Any objections from the board to doing that? Seeing none, do we have any? The C6 item is the subject is California Resources Agency and Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, otherwise known as BOEM. Presentation and question and answer session on Intergovernmental Task Force on Marine Renewable Energy as it relates to offshore wind energy development along the Central California coast. So basically, it's about wind energy and a presentation from BOEM. Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, I will inform the board and the public that the representative from BOEM was unable to be with us this evening, so that this item has been postponed and will be agendized at a later time. So that brings us to C1, update from the Marine Services Facility Boatyard Ad Hoc Committee on the committee's recent activities. The chair is Mr. McClish. Dana?
Yes, we have not met. We did not meet the last month, and next month the RFQ responses should be in, so we're hoping that we do get some responses. Thank you.
Dana, do you have any responses as of today?
No, we don't.
We've had some inquiries, but nothing formally submitted yet.
Any comments, questions from the board? And I should have asked for public comment on that, actually. I'm supposed to. I always forget to do that.
I'm guessing that everybody has seen the RFQ because it's pretty lengthy. We put together
Well, if there's
most of it, and then after that, the city attorney added a lot.
Actually, if you don't mind, I mean, certainly the board's familiar with it, but there may be people in the public that are paying attention to this meeting who are not familiar. Can you give us a very brief description, please, of the nature of the RFQ?
Okay, a brief description would be that we're looking, or RFQ would be a response for qualifications for a project to put in a marine facility, a boatyard. And it's pretty wide open as far as the parameters go. We're talking about using the triangle lot for the boatyard and also for storage of boats to add revenue to the operation. And then we are also looking at the travel lift being across the street, south of the South T Pier. We gave the RM's design that they put together after our input as an example, but not as a this is what it's got to be. It was more or less, we want to see different ideas and who might be willing to enter into an RFP afterwards, a proposal to actually do it. So it's basically we're looking for interest.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? None? C2. Item C2 is an update from the Finance and Budget Ad Hoc Committee on the committee's recent activities, including consideration of recommendations regarding the city's cost allocation plan, transit occupancy tax, sales tax, and possessory interest tax revenues. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Chair of that committee is Mr. Maloney.
Thank you. So we have met since the last Harbor Advisory Board meeting, and The report I'm going to give goes into a little bit of background about the cost allocation plan, which was part of the focus of our meeting, as well as we've been tasked as a HAB to come up with different options for helping with capital improvements and various issues on the waterfront, financially speaking. So I'm just going to go into the report, and I think if there's any other questions after, then we can get into a discussion. So is it okay if I just read this report in? That's what I'd prefer to do. So regarding the cost allocation plan, the City of Morro Bay uses a cost allocation plan to distribute administrative costs, such as accounting, investment, maintenance, legal, etc., to various city departments and enterprise funds. This is done in order to capture each department's and each fund's share of these administrative costs, charging those costs to the budget of each department and fund, including the Harbor Department. An essential principle of the cost allocation plan is that city departments and funds contribute their fair share of administrative costs to the general fund providing these services. The ad hoc committee is aware that the consultant's study, which produced the city's existing cost allocation plan, was conducted over 10 years ago, and is aware that the city departments and their functions have been reorganized more than once since then. Therefore, it would seem the assumptions and metrics that define the current cost allocation plan, at least as they relate to the Harbor Department, may no longer be accurate. In its May 2015 report entitled City of Morro Bay Financial and Organizational Study, the management partners consulting firm recognized the problem, and recommended that the city prepare an OMB A-87 compliant cost allocation plan on which to base contributions from all funds. Doing so will allow the city to be sure each fund is truly paying its fair share of the general fund overhead cost. The ad hoc committee proposes that the HAB recommend to the City Council that the city update the existing cost allocation plans, assumptions, and metrics. Further, if city finances make the hiring of an outside consulting firm to study the current and projected cost allocation plan assumptions and metrics, that the City Council direct city staff to conduct an internal cost allocation reality check, department by department and fund by fund. The goal would be to ensure that each department and fund, including the Harbor Department, is contributing its fair share to the city administrative services that each department and fund utilize to execute its purpose and mission. So now moving on to, sorry. Okay.
So that's a standalone topic.
Yeah, true.
So any questions from the board on that portion of the committee's report? And by the way, I think we're missing a couple of words I might suggest, Mr. Chairman. The sentence that says, further, if city finances make the hiring of an outside consulting firm to study the current and projected cost allocation plan assumptions and metrics not currently possible. I think that's what we're missing.
Yeah.
Okay. That the city then do an internal.
Correct.
Gut check.
Thanks for catching it.
Okay. Gene?
No, that answers the question.
Jeremiah?
So management partners did the review.
In 2015.
Oh, I see. Okay, this is part of the.
But the original study was done in 2009, which is giving the metrics that are currently used. We're still using metrics that were developed in 2009.
Yeah, I was just. There you go. Oh,
Yes, it is.
it was on.
Get closer.
I was just wondering if someone reviewed their work. I mean, is their work accurate? Is it correct, or is that what is being reviewed here? The management partners.
I would say, in a sense, that's what we're asking the city to do again. We, as a ad hoc committee, are just at the glances that we've been able to do going over it, find issues, and we want to look at it more holistically. And I think the way to do that is to, as management partners recommended, is to do another study. I mean, it's been since 2009, and the city's reorganized multiple times. Like, the data that everything's based on for the current model is just out of date.
Okay.
So, and that's what Management Partners is just saying exactly that it's out of date, needs to be upgraded.
Okay, no.
So they didn't, yeah.
Is there an action item proposed for that segment of the committee's report?
Yeah. I'm ready to make a motion based on this, if the board will hear it. I move to recommend that the City of Morro Bay update the cost allocation study.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Gene?
And that would include basically the first couple of paragraphs that you read. I mean, that's what it's based on. Does that get written into the motion?
If the motion passes, then it's incumbent upon the Harbor Advisory Board to make a recommendation, a formal recommendation to the City Council for which it serves, and certainly some of that background information would be appropriate to put in the cover.
Yeah,
Jeremiah? Lynn? Dana? Bill?
I'm good.
Okay. You might consider with that motion, you identified in your report that if city finances were such that funding through a consultant, an update of the cost allocation plan wouldn't be currently possible, that the city at least reach out to its departments heads and fund heads and do a gut check on whether they think it's working correctly or not working correctly.
Okay, yeah.
Would you like to modify the motion?
Yeah, let me amend this and so I move to. Do I need to make a motion to amend, or can I just read
the second needs to agree that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I move to recommend to the city that it use a consultant to update the cost allocation study if financially feasible, and if not, that they direct city staff to do an internal check at the minimum. Would that?
I'll second that.
An internal check of what, please?
An internal check. Hold on. Let me.
Of the
cost allocation.
Of the cost allocations.
Of the assumptions and the metrics?
Yes, of the assumptions and the metrics of the cost allocation plan. I don't want to get.
You got that one?
Yeah, I'm trying. I know.
Sounds good to me.
So, okay.
I need to. I know where I'm going, but I want to make sure it's clear though, because it needs to be specific. I understand what Ron's saying, and I just don't.
Why don't we indulge Lori's patience and ask her to repeat what she thinks the motion might be now?
Yeah, that might be good.
I only have the first sentence. Use a consultant if financially feasible to update the cost allocation study.
It's
all I have.
It's a plan. It's not a study.
Yeah, plan.
And if not, do an internal
Check.
review.
Through city staff, Dana's suggesting,
Correct.
of the
Assumptions and metrics.
Assumptions and metrics of the current cost allocation plan.
Correct.
So we're still in discussion. So, Mr. Director, if you were to get such instructions from administration, would that make sense to you?
Yes, that makes sense to me. We do, as you may recall, during the goal-setting process, we had recommended, the HAB had recommended doing the OMB 80 whatever cost allocation plan, and we put that into the work plan. Council directed to do that internal, bring it back as they called it a gut check at the time, which I think is similar to what you're talking about. Probably what you're referring to is a little more than a gut check. But we do have that on the current council goal objectives. It's going to go to the council next week. So it's the second part of your motion is kind of wrapped up in that already in the goals, which is fine. It's nothing. I'm just making commentary.
So this would be the Harbor Advisory Board encouraging the City Council to take one of two actions. Any other discussion? Lori, do you have a motion that makes sense to you? Okay. And, okay. Neil, you have something else to add? Okay. Any other discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Okay, moving on to Part B.
Yeah, second part of the report here. This is the Harbor Fund and the Harbor Department revenue. According to the City of Morro Bay, the Morro Bay Harbor Department is an enterprise fund and operates from revenues generated from the Tidelands properties managed by the department. Per the city website, revenue received from tenants' rent, boat fees, waterfront, Tideland leases, and other sources is put back into preventative maintenance, capital improvement, parking services, staffing, public safety, special events, and public education. Additionally, the department is involved with resource management of the city's beaches and natural resources, including coordination with applicable state and federal regulatory agencies. While the Harbor Department has done an effective and responsible job of executing its mission using revenues from tenant rents, boat fees, waterfront Tideland leases, and other harbor-related sources, it does not share it in revenue from the city's transient occupancy tax, or the TOT, or the sales tax, or the possessory interest assessment collected by the city from hotel and motel property and its related occupancy within the area of the Harbor Enterprise Fund. The ad hoc committee urges the HAB to recommend to the City Council that the Harbor Department share in the TOT revenue, the sales tax revenue, and the possessory interest assessment revenue that is collected in the area of the Harbor Enterprise Fund. Further, the committee proposes that such revenue share be dedicated to the budgetary needs of the Harbor's capital maintenance and improvement needs. So that concludes my report, but we'd like to
see if the board has questions or comments, and we'll start. Dana?
I am still looking at this.
We'll come back. Bill?
So, a little history. Was there a rationale, Eric, or a reason that the Harbor Department Enterprise Zone did not share in the TOT? I mean, or was that just because there was no hotels besides maybe Gray Motel down there for a long period of time, and now that we've had, Estero and Anderson, and now with Redican's thing, it's about time to look at it? Or do you have any history on that, Eric?
I do not. I mean, Gray's Inn's been there for a long time, like you say. Right. Sales tax has always been there, and possessory interest tax has been there forever. I am unaware of any documented, definitive history one way or another why it is the way it is. As you know, you've seen the cost allocation. It's a lot of pages and graphs and numbers and things that it's difficult to understand unless you put it together. It doesn't really have a letter to go along with it or an explanation on what was done or methodology. It's just a bunch of numbers. So I've never seen anything in the cost allocation, nor have I ever seen any, like say, rationale or written documentation of why it's one way versus the other.
So with that in mind, because of the fact of the capital improvements that really need to be done on the harbor, I think it's imperative that we capture a share of this TOT and some of these other revenue sources for the Harbor Department.
And before I move on down the line, to put that in perspective, Eric, in the department's last capital projection, can you share with us and the public the sort of numbers that the harbor infrastructure needs in the next few years? Are we talking hundreds? Are we talking thousands? Are we talking millions? In order to be safe and workable?
Hundreds of thousands. Without having the budget right in front of me, exact numbers. between, the city's 2 T-piers and all the other slips we have, and then all the little public facilities here and there, plus our equipment, capital equipment, boat type needs, we're in the hundreds of thousands. If we were to fund all of our capital on an amortized basis and put money towards that every year, I don't have that figure in front of me, but it's multiple tens of thousands of dollars per year we should be putting away towards those bigger projects, where historically we've just picked them off one by one from the accumulation fund. As the accumulation fund builds, we fund things as we're able to. It's a significant nut to crack.
Yeah, the last time I took a look at that worksheet that the department prepared in terms of capital improvement and capital maintenance, and did sort of a seat of the pants amortization, the annual figure was well in excess of $100,000.
Yeah, that would not be an incorrect statement.
Okay, we're still in discussion on this. Lynn?
My only comment is that it seems very logical that the harbor department get some of those revenues, since it is the harbor that brings in those tourists to stay in the hotels that are on the waterfront.
Jeremiah?
Yeah, I pretty much just agree with what Lynn said. It's something I personally never thought about or recognized, but it's certainly something that the harbor should be sharing in the revenues from the businesses and the hotels on the waterfront.
Well, just to be clear, we're not, when we talk about the waterfront, we're talking about the enterprise zone, within the enterprise zone.
Right, within the Tidelands.
Right. Gene?
Eric, can you tell me what a possessory interest assessment is?
Yeah, that's basically the property tax that a leaseholder pays because they have possessory interest of that property. It'd be like, you own a property and you pay property tax on it. It's the exact same tax, but it's just called possessory interest tax because you don't own it outright, but you have a possessory interest in it.
And that's not a county tax, that's a city tax?
No, it's assessed by the county. It's just like regular property tax, and then it filters back, and the cities get whatever the percentage of that is.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for the committee? Gene?
I'm assuming that we're going to make a motion on this?
Do you have a motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion. I would take that last paragraph and just leave it right at, where did I see it? The Harbor Advisory Board recommend to the City Council that the Harbor Department share its top revenue, the sales tax revenue, and the possessory interest assessment revenue that is collected in the area of the Harbor Enterprise Fund. Further, the committee proposes that such revenue shall be dedicated to the budgetary needs of the harbor capital management, maintenance, and improvement needs.
Management or maintenance?
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion? Dana, you ready?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that in a working waterfront, we're looking at all the aspects there, and if we're losing properties because they're from marine related to a hotel, then we should at least get some of the money from the revenues.
Good point.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Abstentions? None? Carries. So, Lori, is it okay if I get together with you tomorrow and get the wording of these two motions so that I can draft the recommendation? Okay, thanks. Okay, agenda item C3, update from the Eelgrass Ad Hoc Committee on the committee's recent activities, including consideration of draft local coastal plan / general plan eelgrass language and proposed outline for an eelgrass policy. I presume that means a Morro Bay eelgrass policy. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Chair is Ms. Meissen.
Thank you. First, I'd like to recognize the members of the committee who have done such a great job contributing a good deal of thought and time and energy, and that's Neil and Jean, Kathy Novak, and Lexi Bell. We would not have been able to do much of anything without them. And now, Neil, would you like to make a statement?
Yeah, thank you. And at this time, I need to step down from the ad hoc committee after speaking with city staff and city attorney. As a waterfront leaseholder, I have a conflict of interest being on an ad hoc committee. However, since the city directs that a leaseholder sit on the Harbor Advisory Board, I do not have a conflict if I am here present for these topics in the sole capacity of being as just a board member. But on the ad hoc committee, as the discussions were getting closer to policy that could affect me financially, it's prudent that at this time I step down. So I know that it's in good hands, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Thank you for your work, Neil. So with the recognizing that eelgrass is vital to the health of the estuary and that it has been in marked decline in the Back Bay for the last number of years, 10 years or more, this committee was formed in order to educate the Harbor Advisory Board on the status of eelgrass in Morro Bay. While investigating this, the area of concern has grown to include permitting challenges, a new federal policy, or fairly new federal policy, known as the California Eelgrass Mitigation, or the CMB, and other requirements and options for permitting. And this was to see if in some way the Harbor Department, through the city, could participate in the protection and the recovery of the plant, which is vital to a healthy bay, as well as to assist the waterfront leaseholders by creating a city policy or guidelines to follow in permitting. Over the months, we have spoken with various officials and researchers, including from the NEP, Cal Poly researchers, state agencies such as the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Federal National Marine Fisheries Service and City Planning Department. These people have been very encouraging, all of them, in supporting us as to develop an eelgrass policy for the city, which would help, hopefully, to smooth some of the problems that we found. Some of the problems that are encountered with eelgrass, one is the reason for the decline over the years is really unknown, and that's an area for the researchers. Mitigation is required because the CMB, according to the CMB, there shall be no net loss of eelgrass in an estuary, but the mitigation efforts have not been successful. Therefore, the funds that have been put toward mitigation by various developers when they want to do projects along the waterfront is essentially wasted. Compliance with various regulatory agencies, with the regulations of various agencies, is so difficult because they are not necessarily in conflict, but they vary in many details, and it makes the development or the getting of the permits and complying with the regulations difficult, more costly, without increasing the effectiveness of the effort. The conclusion of the committee then is that an eelgrass policy for the local coastal plan and the general plan would be of benefit both to the leaseholders, to the harbor, to the city, and to our bay. We have developed a proposed language for such a policy that we would hope would be included in the general plan or the local coastal plan, and I'll read this. The city of Morro Bay is home to a bustling waterfront, a working harbor, an estuary of national significance, and is a designated harbor of refuge for mariners. the natural resources of the bay and the many water-related activities play a large role in the city's history, heritage, culture, and economy. One natural resource of consequence to both the health of the natural environment and the viability of the waterfront is eelgrass. Thus, the city shall develop an eelgrass policy that addresses the permitting and protection issues related to eelgrass. That's a statement of a policy. Then to implement the policy, we would like to recommend another part, and it's an implementation. The outline that is in your packet lists aspects which we deem necessary to carry out the policy. These elements form an implementation plan. The committee proposes that the City Council review this outline and decide if these elements are appropriate and necessary and sufficient, if any should be changed, deleted, or others added or substituted. Or the City Council may decide that a body other than this committee pursue this work, which could be to hire an outside consultant with additional skills for such a proposal. Thus, the committee would like to have two motions. One is a motion to recommend, that the HAB recommend to City Council to include in the LCP an eelgrass policy with the language I've already read. A second motion, but since they're so closely related, it's hard to talk about one without talking about the other, is a motion that the HAB recommend to Council to review the proposed outline for the eelgrass policy to decide if these elements are appropriate and necessary, if any should be changed, deleted, or others added. Or the City Council may decide that a body other than this committee pursue the work, that is, hire an outside consultant with additional skills for such a proposal. So I would actually like to make those two motions.
Well, before we get into motions, can we see if the board has any questions or comments for the committee regarding this report?
Certainly.
Okay. Dana?
No, it's very thorough. Still digesting it.
Okay. Neil? This is on the report.
Right, and I agree. I think that what you guys have here started, I think, is thorough, and I support what you guys have put forward.
I concur to that. Again, this is eelgrass is a unknown, and we have to start somewhere, and I think you guys have done a great job, Lynn. Congratulate to you.
To them.
To them. And to you.
Part of also recusing myself is I had no part in any of this. Also, I stopped participating on the HAB or in the ad hoc committee before any of this was put together.
You mean before it got into policy?
Correct.
That was a question, not a statement. So, and you answered it. So
Asked and
I just
answered.
wanted to make sure I wasn't making a statement. Jeremiah, this general discussion for the committee on this topic?
Very good job, and congratulations to everybody involved.
Gene?
Yeah, we have Lexi and Kathy Novak in the audience if there's any other questions.
Madam Chair, would you like to have either or both of your committee members in the audience make any commentary?
Kathy or Lexi, would you like to come to the podium if you have any comments?
Good evening, board members. Kathy Novak. I just want to compliment everybody that was on the committee, too. And Lexi did a fabulous job at taking the bull by the horns and actually getting some of this language on paper for us first to circulate to the committee. So I'd like to thank Lexi for that work. Just a couple things I just was going to mention, too, is it's what we were looking at in the committee is trying to get some sort of consistency going, because the poor folks that come through and trying to get permits, they go to the city and they get some language at the city, then they go to the Coastal Commission, they get another language at the Coastal Commission, then they go to the Army Corps of Engineers, and then the Army Corps of Engineers has the language from the Kemp. So when you try to blend all of them together, sometimes it doesn't quite work out right. So what this committee is trying to do is working with the city, coming up with this policy that we're also going to be going to talk to the Coastal Commission. And we do have the support of National Marine Fisheries with the Kemp on what we're doing here, too, so that we can try to see if we can get some consistent language so when somebody comes through the city, the requirements that they need to do and how eelgrass affects our projects, that they can do it here at this level and then walk it through the rest of the permits, and it all stays the same at the end of the day when it comes out. So that's kind of one of the things. And then one other little quick comment I was going to mention, too, is on this policy, on the outline policy, the idea here for the policy is to have something akin to like the waterfront master plan in this policy. And the difference between the being included in the general plan, having the language in the general plan that says the city shall develop an eelgrass policy is important, so it goes there. Now, the implementation that Lynn talked about from the LCP to implement the LCP policy here would be creating this policy that would be something that this would remain fluid so that the city could change it. Now, the city's waterfront master plan has a section in there for the design guidelines. That section in Chapter 5 is actually codified in the city's zoning ordinance. So the rest of the waterfront master plan is not codified in the zoning ordinance, which means that the city council has the ability to change the waterfront master plan solely by themselves, and they do not need to go to the Coastal Commission for approvals for any of those changes. If they want to change the design guidelines, since it's in the zoning ordinance, they would have to get Coastal Commission approval to be able to do that. So the idea here is if you keep it at the city level, this policy at the city level, like it is with the waterfront master plan, that if changes happen in the future, it's just the city council changing the eelgrass policy at this local level, and it doesn't require any further participation from the actually submitting an amendment to the Coastal Commission to make some changes for the local policy. So I kind of wanted to hopefully explain that good enough so you can understand. I know that this permitting stuff is very confusing, but I think the long and the short of what I'm trying to say is the policy would be strictly a city policy at this level, and the city council in the future would be able to change the policy at any point in time. And if the Kemp changed, for example, they could easily change the policy here and then have to spend 2 years going through the Coastal Commission for an amendment. So hopefully that makes a little bit sense and just a little bit more background on the actual policy, the outline itself. But hope everybody likes what we've come up with. You know, I'm here for the long haul. If you continue with the committee, if you needed more assistance, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Ms. Novak, thank you. And that brings me to sort of an associated question for the committee. One of your bullet items, which is entitled Alignment with Kemp, states eelgrass policy will align city permitting requirements with the survey and mitigation requirements outlined in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's California Eelgrass Mitigation Policy, Kemp. Last updated in October 2014, the Kemp serves as a guiding document for permitting agencies such as Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and California Coastal Commission, end quote. So my question for the committee is that alignment, in the committee's current opinion, realistically possible? If the city established an eelgrass policy, a local eelgrass policy, which was embedded in the master waterfront plan, is that realistically possible to align?
Yes, because when somebody goes through a permit process, at the end of the day, when they go to the Army Corps to get their permit, the Kemp is going to be the guiding policy that people have to adhere to for their permit. So it's easy, the Kemp is easy to follow because it has specific outlines of what people need to do. There's also options available in the Kemp, for example, for mitigations. There never was before the allowance for in lieu fees to be collected for mitigation purposes. The Kemp now has that. So what we're looking at, since the Kemp is the ruling document for the eelgrass, on the federal level that everybody has to adhere to, it's easy to align with the KEMP so that we can provide this consistency as people are going forward from this city level all the way through the permitting process, and then actually being able to adhere to the federal policy at the end of the day.
And if the ad hoc committee has an opinion, would a local eelgrass policy simply mirror KEMP, or would it vary in some way? Would there be differences between the two?
I think you'd run yourself into problems if you tried to make too many differences. I think that there's some sections of the KEMP that allow for, let's say, for in lieu fees, for example. The city policy could have in lieu fees. There's certain limitations that you cannot use in lieu fees for. So, for example, you can't hire a biologist, for example. And there's some other limitations. So I wouldn't say to the city, go hire a biologist to pay with in lieu fees, because you're not going to be able to do that at the end of the day, because that's not aligned with the KEMP. So if we know some of these things specifically in advance, we can stay away from those. Now, there may be some opportunities the city might come up with specifically that fits Morro Bay and maybe not anybody else, and we can put that into the policy. I would recommend that if we were going to do that, we would check with National Marine Fisheries Service first to see if they feel that that would be consistent with the KEMP if we put that in there. Those agencies are more than willing to help us out. And if there's something that we can do that's allowed under the KEMP, they're going to support us to be able to do that. But we don't want to get in conflict with the KEMP, because that's not going to solve anybody's problem.
Okay, thank you. I understood that. And I have another question for the committee. Another one of your bullet items in your proposed implementation plan is, quote, eelgrass policy should include language that allows for pre-planning surveys to be conducted outside the KEMP growing seasons when supported by the biologist, end quote. Help me understand what that's all about, please.
Currently, the KEMP says that the eelgrass growing season starts April 1st and goes to the October 31st. So if somebody's going to be doing a project down on the waterfront, for example, and they have to do a pre-planning eelgrass survey, they need to do that survey between April 1st and October 31st. And then also in a construction project, there's a pre-construction survey that's required, there's a post-construction survey that's required also. When you have a project, for example, let's say something happens in January, for example, and there's something that needs to be done down there, it's not that the eelgrass is not growing. The eelgrass is really not growing during that off season, but there's still evidence of eelgrass if there's eelgrass in that particular area. So what we're trying to say with this is that and I think maybe I need to back up just a little tiny bit too, because what we've been doing with these projects so far is getting these pre-planning surveys done on a project. And you go down, the diver goes down and says, okay, well, there's an eelgrass bed over here. It's about this size. And then we have to map everything and put it on the plans and show it to the planning department as it goes through.
Excuse me just for a second. So
Sure.
You're talking about the permitting process right now. Is that
Correct.
Are you correct? Is that correct?
Right.
And where in the permitting process, please, does, quote, pre-planning, end quote, fall?
So if we have a project down on the waterfront that wants to put in new docks, for example, what they would do is they fill out the application for the city to go to the planning department, and before the city would accept the application for the project, you would need to do a pre-planning eelgrass survey to be included in the total packet that you give the city planning department to file for that project.
So, Ron, let me check in here. That's a very precise plan. It's very detailed, very precise. It's not a general plan.
But it's a precursor to obtaining the city's initial attention to your application?
Correct.
Yes.
So when we had our discussion with National Marine Fisheries Service, National Marine Fisheries Service basically said, long story short, we don't really care about a pre-planning survey. What we care about is the pre-construction survey, which needs to be done between 30 and 60 days prior to actual construction. Because
let me jump in again. That may be a year difference between those two surveys.
Or longer. It could be
Or
3
longer.
or 4 years, depending on how you go through a process. So what they do, what we've been doing is pre-planning survey. You go through the process, city, coastal commission, Army Corps. Then you get ready to do your actual construction, and then you do a pre-construction survey. So like Gene says, it could be 3 or 4 or 5 years in between some of these projects. So the pre-planning survey is really outdated. If there's an impact to eelgrass, the National Marine Fisheries Service will take the pre-construction survey, use that as the baseline to determine if there's any impacts to the eelgrass from the project, whether it be short-term impacts like driving a pile right through the middle of an eelgrass bed, or long-term impacts that come from, let's say, boats or docks shading eelgrass. So the pre-planning survey part has become really something that's not as important anymore as it used to be since this KIMP now has come into play. I think it's been a little bit helpful. So the National Marine Fisheries Service says, well, basically what we're going to do now is with this pre-planning survey is we'd send a diver down and they'd say, oh yeah, you've got a little bit of eelgrass right there. It's probably, maybe 2 square meters. And that's it. Nothing really, really super formal, but just an identification that there's eelgrass there so that the city has enough information to prepare an environmental document that they need to under CEQA. So what we did was we said, rather than going through...
Define CEQA, please. Not everybody is listening to you knows what that is.
Oh, CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. Sorry.
Thank you.
So it's kind of a cumbersome process, and it's hard to explain. So basically, I think trying to make things easy here for this is what we're saying is the pre-planning surveys aren't necessary to be done to the level that we had been doing it. And I'll try to dive back into your original question, which was timing. So before, when we were doing pre-planning surveys, it was required that the pre-planning surveys be done during the growing season, which is April 1st to October 31st. So if somebody came in and had a project and it was December or January, it's like, okay, you've got to wait till April 1st before you can do an eelgrass survey so that we can get your application and start processing your application. The April 1st wasn't the magic date either, because if the weather was bad, a lot of things, so somebody might be waiting in 3 weeks into April before they can actually get a diver down and check on the eelgrass. So allowing for off-season pre-planning surveys just to identify if there might be eelgrass in that location that somebody might have to mitigate for in the future is what we're trying to get away from, so that we can allow people to, in November, December, January, have a basic eelgrass survey to be able to say, is there any eelgrass on this site, so that they can move through the permitting process.
And the committee believes that can be under local control.
Yes, because what we talked to Scott Graham about how the city planning department would be looking at applications coming in, and Scott was comfortable that the pre-planning surveys now can go to a little bit less intensive a report and be acceptable for processing at the planning department for these projects.
On the local level.
Correct. You still will need the key part, though, is where the Coastal Commission and Army Corps really don't care too much about the pre-planning surveys either. What they care about is the pre-construction survey, the one that will be used as the baseline for determining whether you have impacts to eelgrass or not.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Lynn, back to you.
Lexi, I saw you. Did you want to come forth and say something?
Hi, I'm Lexi from the Morro Bay National Estuary Program, and I sit on the committee as well. And it was a pleasure working with everyone to get this far. I wanted to just note a couple things. One is that you asked about aligning with the KEMP, and the committee, as Kathy mentioned, all felt that was important for making sure permitting works well at all levels and makes projects maybe a little more viable and timely. But the other thing is that the eelgrass policy would be a city policy and not part of any plan that gets approved by the Coastal Commission. So there could be other components to it. We could have a component about education or about research that was totally unrelated to permitting. So those are things that we could consider. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the estuary program is continuing to do our mapping and monitoring and research, and we're going to continue to make that publicly available and can be informative in this process as we try to develop a policy. We also were hoping that this recommendation to the City Council would, the outline would just give them a sense of the direction we were hoping to go with the policy, so that we're not spending too much time getting the nitty-gritty details down before they say, no, we think this is a horrible idea, or something to that effect. So those are all my additional comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I won't presume. Will eelgrass be addressed? And I'm sure, confident of the answer, but that's okay. Will eelgrass be addressed in NEP's State of the Bay report that it will share with us very shortly?
Yes. Unfortunately, we may not have our new mapping information in, or may have some preliminary, don't share as final kind of information. But yeah, it will be included.
Well, while I have you, and I apologize to the board because it's not on topic, but is there, please email me with what you think would be if there's an ideal time to put you on the agenda.
Okay, sure. Early is better for me.
Yeah, happy to consider the ideal time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your involvement in this.
Did you have a question?
No. With that abundance of information with which Kathy and Lexi always bring, are there other questions or comments from the board? We got very much into the permitting, and that is one part of it, but we still have the educational part that would probably be ultimately included in the implementation, as well as mitigation options, which are governed by the CMB. And we may be able to find ways in Morro Bay to activate some of those to make it easier for developers along, or for leaseholders along the waterfront who are trying to mitigate and having great difficulty in doing it because they put a lot of money into transplanting eelgrass and it all dies, or it simply doesn't grow, or it does not last for the required 3 years. So although this didn't come up heavily tonight, it is hopefully in the future something that would be in the policy, and we could then pursue and make life easier, as well as having funds invested in a more productive way.
Lynn, the committee has identified 5 possible mitigation options, and I'm sure it's not just restricted to 5. The first one is, quote, comprehensive management plans, end quote. Please educate me and anybody else that would like, what is a comprehensive management plan as it relates to eelgrass mitigation?
I think that is referring to the kind of thing that they did in Newport. In Newport, the city of Newport is handling the mitigation so that if somebody wants to do some minor development on their property and they are going to affect a small amount of eelgrass, it can be ignored because it's all subsumed in a large management plan that is run by the city. If, and I don't remember the numbers, but then there's a small amount that you can affect without having to mitigate. You can get into a larger amount, and as long as it does not exceed the total number of whatever the unit is, square meters, that the city is managing, then your mitigation is handled by the city's total mitigation plan. If it goes beyond that, then you have to do your own mitigation in size.
So comprehensive in this case, as it relates to a comprehensive management plan, would mean what, the city's entire waterfront, for instance?
Yes, something like
the
that.
area of. Okay. And another one of the bullets is, quote, out-of-kind mitigation, end quote. So I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, that means some vegetation that is not exactly similar to that which might be found on a site. Is that true or false? What, please, is out-of-kind mitigation, and is it feasible under Kemp?
This language here that we put in is basically right out of the Kemp. So I'm really not totally familiar with the out-of-kind mitigation things, but what we tried to do is try to take the options that was available in the Kemp and just take it out and put it in our policy because it was there. And maybe out-of-kind mitigation might not be something that would ever work here, but I didn't want to lose the opportunity just to put it on paper just in case.
Oh, okay, thanks. So a suggestion for the committee. Whatever it is that the board decides to put forward to City Council relative to eelgrass mitigation policy for Morro Bay, we need to define all of the acronyms. We need to define things that a council person, much less anybody else, might not exactly have experience with the definition of. The less questions that we pose, the better we're going to be.
This is the Newport Comprehensive Plan, and if you would like a copy, I'd be happy to email it to you. It's about 21 or 27 pages, something like that. So just get an idea.
I would suggest that the committee chair send it to the entire board.
Be happy to.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, Lynn. It's back to you.
Well, so I guess with that, if there are no more questions, may I be permitted to make our two motions? Perhaps our second one would not be as appropriate with...
Excuse me. Can we have our liaison maybe chip in since we're making a motion to the City Council? And do you have any questions, Matt, or concerns on this thing? Or what's your feelings on this? I mean...
You've asked a couple questions there, Bill. So my feelings in terms of City Council, I think in terms of general plan update, LCP update, working plan update, I think understanding the eelgrass and its place in the large to the small, I think it's very necessary that we get this report. It's very pertinent on a number of fronts. So in that respect, I'm with it. Let's, do what, I think it's just, I would definitely advocate being sent to the City Council. Any other questions?
Yes, please. Can you, speaking just for yourself as a council person, because I understand you are not in a position to speak for the council at large, how much information would be useful for the purposes that you just described? I mean, in the past, on other topics, not on this topic, but in the past, the council, for instance, as it relates to these kinds of topics, has requested that the Harbor Advisory Board come up with a generalized mission statement or broad guideline or something like that, which Kathy already addressed and Lynn have already addressed as being not as being a policy statement without regard to the details of implementation. So what kind of information would be the most useful to you as a council person so that we get some guidelines, because we've got to put something forward?
Okay. Speaking to me personally as a council person, I have an interest in the harbor. So my interest is, selfishly, that we need to have a working waterfront harbor for a number of fronts. Ecologically, pragmatically, fishing-wise, a working waterfront. So me, selfishly, as a council person, I'm like, okay, I'd like as much information as possible. now, not necessarily speaking for the council, but thinking in the, the 30,000-foot metaphor of looking down on it all, I do believe my response to a Harbor Advisory Board of this is going, what are you feeling confident with, and you making the confident recommendation to a council saying, okay, this is pertinent information, this is complete information, we feel very confident pushing this forward. So there's a couple, I'm sorry to confuse the matter, but I do believe for people who just, they want to take what you're selling, if you want to advocate for this, then we're trusting in you to do that. That makes sense.
Sure. So would it therefore, in your opinion, be appropriate for, if the Harbor Advisory Board feels comfortable in making a recommendation to council on a topic, on a suggested policy topic, that it do that, and then provide all of the background material that it took to derive that determination, and then council can decide whether it wants to look at it or not?
I want to say yes twice. Yes, send all the information that you think council could use this report with your advice. 2, councils come and go. Harbor Advisory Boards come and go. This information, would be putting it down for the record, then we coming back to it at a later date. So I think it's useful on 2 fronts.
That's very valuable. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And that's what I think we still would like to make the recommendation to council that they include a general policy statement on eelgrass in the LCP and the GP. And then perhaps we will postpone the motion on the proposed outline.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just acting listening. I apologize.
And I will take this back to the committee as to how we should handle it in the future. So if my committee members agree with that? No?
I don't.
Okay.
Make 2 motions to see how it flies.
With respect, I think the committee is, with all the information it shared with the board and with the audience and with the liaison, it sounds to me like the committee is in a position to make a recommendation as it relates to the city adopting an eelgrass policy without regard to the particulars of that policy.
And that is motion number 1, but not motion number 2. Number 2 is just an outline. It's a very generalized outline.
Well, queuing off of the councilman's comments, I think if the committee was to recommend to the board through a motion that the city adopt a local eelgrass mitigation policy and then flesh that out a little bit, as you did with some language earlier on, then we can attach to that motion the background information that's been developed, which would lead to all the possible points of implementation.
Okay. Okay, then I'm going to make a motion. I move that the Harbor Advisory Board recommend to council to include in the LCP and GP the eelgrass policy with the language as I read earlier, and I can reread it if you like, or we can. Yeah. Where did I put it?
No, I'm
Yeah.
good. I mean,
No, that's
referencing the document, if you're going with that language that you've got in your written document,
in the
I
document.
mean, it seems like we ought to keep these 2 things somewhat separate, just to keep it clean if we're not sure where we're going on the second part. So this is just a policy statement
The policy statement
into the
is
GP,
city of
LCP
Morro-
update.
It's, shoot.
Can I help, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the motion that the Morro Bay Harbor Advisory Board recommend to the City Council that the following statement be included. The proposed eelgrass language for local coastal plan, general plan update. The City of Morro Bay is home for a bustling waterfront, working waterfront, estuary of national significance, a designation as a safe harbor of refuge. The natural resources of the bay and the many water-related activities play a large role in the city's history, heritage, and culture and economics of the one national resource of consequence to both the health of the natural environment and the vibrancy of the waterfront is eelgrass. Therefore, the city shall develop an eelgrass policy that addresses the permitting and protection issues related to eelgrass.
Second.
I'm in favor of this. I also like the outline.
One small point. I think in the version that I have, there's a word missing that I heard in Lynn's report and reading after the words city's history, heritage, and culture. I think you also had the word in economic. Did you have it in yours?
It's in the motion.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay,
No?
because they're going off this.
Am I?
No.
Okay. I have no comments. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Abstentions? None? Carries.
So Kathy?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I was just hoping maybe I could clear up a little confusion here. It was my understanding as a committee member, the second part of this for the policy was to go to the City Council with a recommendation that this be the outline that they could use to implement the policy and get direction from the City Council if they supported this eelgrass committee to continue down and flesh this out further, or to possibly in the future use a consultant, but not any more than just here's the basic outline. Do we have your blessings that you want us to continue, or you don't like it, tell us to stop? That's basically what...
Yeah, I understand that. To repeat what I said earlier, the instructions that this body's received from the City Council in the past are to provide council with very broad brush recommendations regarding policy, and then to provide, as I discussed with Councilor Makowiecki, implementation information, background information, and such. So what I would propose is that the committee do a first draft of the recommendation from the Harbor Advisory Board, which will go under my signature to the council. And I would suggest you lead off with the motion, with the recommendation as per the motion, and then go on to say, and then follow up with what you just said, Kathy, with the information as well. Because as I understand it, the committee not only has some proposed implementation information, which is the two-page bullet item that's embedded in the agenda item, but you also have some background information as well that I think might be very useful to council. Does that make sense to the committee?
So we would make the recommendation and we would send them the proposed outline with the supporting documentation, which
That's correct.
is
That's correct.
voluminous.
Well, it is what it is.
Be it to educate.
That's what it is. So does that suit the committee?
I think so.
Okay. So I look forward to the draft.
Okay, so I should make a second motion that the Harbor Advisory Board recommends City Council to review the proposed outline for eelgrass policy to decide if these elements are appropriate and necessary and sufficient, if any should be changed, deleted, or others added. or that the city council may decide that another body, that a body other than this committee pursue the work, that is, hire the outside consultant, giving us direction to follow the outline and expand on it, or if they want to go with a consultant.
Was that a statement or a motion?
Well, I started out as a motion, it turned into a statement. Give me a minute.
Sure.
Have recommend to council to review the proposed outline for eelgrass policy to decide if these elements are appropriate and necessary, or if they should be changed, deleted, or others added. And if the council wishes the committee to continue fleshing out the policy, or if they prefer to go with an outside consultant. That would be the motion.
Lori, you have a question?
Do you have that drafted right there?
Yes.
Yeah, and just as a general comment, administrative comment, anytime that we come up with a motion, it's really, really helpful if we provide a draft of what
Yes.
of our motion ends up being to Lori, who's kindly tries to collect all this information and get it into minutes for us. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. So start with you, Gene.
No?
Jeremiah?
No.
Lynn, was your motion? Any discussion?
No.
On your own motion? Okay. Bill?
No.
Neil?
None for me.
Dana? No. I have none. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Carries. Okay. Anything else for that committee?
Thank you very much.
Thank you and the committee.
And Kathy and Lexi.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, ladies. Very kind. Very, very kind. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have real professionals helping us.
And you're saying that we're not professional?
Not in the case of eelgrass, buddy.
Gene dreams eelgrass.
Yeah, he might do, actually. Yeah. All right,
Don't go there.
moving along, that brings us to C4. C4 is an update from the Marine Sanctuary Ad Hoc Committee on the committee's recent activities. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'm the chair of that. I will remind the board and the audience that on October 5th, 2015, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, informed the representative of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council that the proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary nomination had been added to the, quote, inventory, end quote, of areas that NOAA may consider in the future for National Marine Sanctuary designation. That's the first step in the formal process of the government considering the application. I reached out to Mr. Bill Duros. He's the regional director of NOAA Sanctuary's West Coast region. On May 18th, and I asked him if he was aware, I asked him if there was any additional information regarding that submission and the position of that application in NOAA's, quote, inventory, end quote. His response to me back on May 19th was, quote, there are no current NOAA activities underway relative to the nomination for Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. It remains in inventory, end quote. Any questions or comments from the board? Gene?
Ron, when you have the man from BOEM show up, whenever he shows up, can we ask him or have him kind of address how the Chumash Heritage Sanctuary is affected?
Great idea. Great idea. excuse me, just give me a moment. So make a note of that. Okay, that's it for that. Moving on, C5, update from the Working Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee on the committee's recent activities, including consideration of a draft Working Waterfront mission statement. Any public comment? Seeing none. Move to the chair of that committee. Gene?
Yes, I'll read Ron's draft statement here. Summary. On April 11th, 2017, the mayor, speaking for the Morro Bay City Council, requested the Harbor Advisory Board provide the City Council with a generalized mission statement regarding a Morro Bay working waterfront and Measure D for consideration by Council for possible inclusion in the current general plan, local plan update. This proposed generalized mission statement is to be sufficiently broad to facilitate the future generation of a Morro Bay working waterfront policy, and sufficiently broad to address Measure D, but not at this time to be specific as to either a working waterfront definition or policy or any clarification of Measure D. Last month we had more detailed information and it was too precise, so we've come back with a draft mission statement. And at this point, I'll ask any questions that the board has on this. Then we'll read a proposed recommendation.
Okay. Dana?
I serve on this ad hoc committee and have discussed this thoroughly with the chair, Gene, and also member Ron Reisner. So it's all here on paper. Hopefully you're reading it.
Yeah.
We are, and I agree, and I have no other comments.
I have no comments.
Lynn?
Yeah, I have a question. Under, let's see, City of Morro Bay's working waterfront uses include, but are not limited to, harbor tract lease sites, other city lands adjacent to Morro Bay, structures on, over, adjacent to Morro Bay. It's not what I want to get to. Infrastructure facilities and properties that provide access to the bay. Facilities and properties that are used for water-dependent or harbor-related private, commercial, industrial, city activities, including tourism, commercial fishing, recreational fishing, mariculture, charter boat repair, boat building, marine supplies, and it goes on. What is left? What is excluded?
Lynn, my recommendation to City Council is only going to be the first two paragraphs here, and then the information area will be that last paragraph.
Okay.
The key language of which is include but are not limited to.
It seems like almost nothing is excluded.
Well, the committee, if the board determines that it is going to recommend something regarding working waterfront policy to council as requested by council, the committee would probably propose that the paragraph that you were just addressing, Lynn, that talks about uses, would be put in the cover letter to the recommendation, because the committee is concerned that people who are involved in the GP and LCP update may not have the background or experience specifically to be able to anticipate all of the kinds of possible uses that might devolve to the waterfront. And it's our understanding that the implementation of a policy, should the city council determine to pursue one, would in part take place through zoning. In other words, land use. So we wanted to plant some seeds as regarding the possible land uses.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if there's no further questions, I'll go ahead and state a recommendation, unless you want to just keep what's written there and use that, but I guess I have to read it out.
It should be read in the record.
Okay. Okay, the Harbor Advisory Board recommends to the City Council that the City of Morro Bay is uniquely located and situated to capitalize on the waters of Morro Bay and the adjacent Pacific Ocean in its general plan and local coastal plan. Further, the City of Morro Bay is dedicated to ensuring a vibrant working waterfront for the purposes of providing, promoting, and supporting land uses, and access in support of water-dependent commercial activities, water-dependent recreational activities, waterfront enhanced commercial activities, water enhanced recreational activities, and for purposes related to providing public access to Tideland Trust lands. Incorporating into the current Morro Bay General Plan and Local Coastal Plan update is a Morro Bay Working Waterfront Land Area, Morro Bay Working Waterfront Land Area and its use is consistent with the requirements of the California Coastal Act. This Morro Bay Working Waterfront Land Area encompasses the Morro Bay waterfront from Target Rock in the north to the southern boundaries of the State Park Marina in the south, and encompasses all waters of Morro Bay within the city limits, as well as all tidelands within the city limits and all wetlands within the city limits, i.e. inclusive of city properties from the west shore of the Sandspit to the bottom of the bluff along the east side of Embarcadero Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Jeremiah?
None.
Lynn?
No,
No.
Bill? Neil? Dana? Mr. Harbor Director?
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. All right. Call the question. All in favor of making this recommendation, the motion recommendation to council?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Passes.
Can we get the motion in a second one more time? Who made them?
Bill?
Bill made the motion?
No,
Yeah,
I didn't
Gene made the
vote.
motion.
Okay, you Bill.
Seconded by Mr. LaFay.
Thank you.
Okay. Sir, absolutely.
Well, first, thanks for voting for that. I think in terms of our GP and LCP updates, and we're going to be coming to a critical mass point in the next 5 or 6 months. So I think this vote and this information is going to be very necessary, along with the item before, with the eelgrass item, in terms of keeping the working waterfront, the Measure D concept, and pushing this forward and getting it to put into, I talked to Scott Graham earlier today, because this was brought up at the last Harbor Board meeting. It's like, okay, the idea is how can this be worked into it? And so to let the Harbor Advisory Board understand, as me, as City Council, or just City Council, taking your recommendation and these ideas, as involved as they are, so I think this information is very, very necessary to keep this moving in terms of what's important to the Harbor Board and what's important to a number of people in terms of that working waterfront, Measure D, and then also by extension the eelgrass. So I just wanted to make sure, and that's what I mentioned to Gene earlier, but I wanted to say it now to kind of just put it out on the record.
Matt, thank you. And once again, some guidance, please. The ad hoc committee has presented to the board over a period of time 2 or 3 reports that develop the concept from beginning with the original instructions back in a year and a half ago from council regarding the HAB being tasked with developing a working waterfront policy. That information describes the committee's investigation into What is a working waterfront? Is there a definition of a working waterfront? Is there not? What have other jurisdictions done with working waterfronts? Should those prior reports be packaged along
Where
with
this, as I see it, Ron and Gene and everybody, this information is not necessarily going to go right to council. This information first is going to go to GPAC and to our consultant who, from GPAC's recommendation, is going to be writing the new general plan. So this is where, as a group in mass, making your recommendation, not just the city council, but also this information needs to go to GPAC also. And just say, and you can give all the information to GPAC and say, this is where this is coming from. And I would think, from my vantage point as a council person, I think that this is very necessary, working waterfront, Measure D, and putting into that the concept of eelgrass, because I do believe it's interconnected. The council member could say also, if a council member like me were interested in it, say, you know, by the way, I would like to see this, but then your recommendation to GPAC hopefully would bear fruit also.
Okay, thank you. So I take that as a yes. More is better.
More is better
in this case,
but I guess more is better, and it's coming from different directions. It's not just going to come from on high down to whoever. We're also going to be going from this advisory board to another advisory board, making not just this. So the thing is, I totally agree. Your recommendation needs to come to council, but then also I would make the recommendation or send your information to GPAC
Directly.
Yes, and to council.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that the motion? We'll make a motion that way.
That's a good idea. That's a good. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good idea.
Okay. Harbor Advisory Board recommends to the City Council that they forward the following statement and previously submitted reports to the General Plan Update consultants. The City of Morro Bay's working waterfront uses include, but not limited to, harbor track, lease sites, and other city lands adjacent to Morro Bay, structures on, over, or adjacent to Morro Bay along the waterfront within the city limits, infrastructure, facilities, properties that provide access to Morro Bay, infrastructures, facilities, and properties that are used for water-dependent or harbor-related private, commercial, industrial, or city activities, including tourism, commercial fishing, recreational fishing, mariculture, charter boat operations, boat repairs and maintenance, boat building, marine supply services, marine construction, marine industries, support services, seafood processing, seafood sales, aquariums, transportation, shipping, military activities, coastal dependent, energy production, boat marinas, boat moorings, boat dockage, wharfage, boat landings, and other dependent uses. Further, the designated Measure D area and its defined uses is incorporated into the City of Morro Bay's working waterfront.
I would like to second.
Wait, before I ask for a second, I'm just trying to get a pause. Okay. Just for my clarification, the board has already determined that the language that you just proposed in a motion would be included in the cover for the prior recommendation. So help me understand why we would need
we didn't say that in the previous motion.
Well, yeah, but I assured the committee and the board that the language would be in the cover.
Yeah, but you didn't. That wasn't part of the motion.
Okay.
So this is a motion to make sure that the City Council reviews it and submits it to the general plan.
Okay.
Consultants.
Okay, Dana?
Yeah, I would like to second that as written. There was one word, boat launching, and you said boat landing. So just as written. Thank you.
Okay, discussion? Neil?
None.
Bill? None. Lynn? Nope. Jeremiah?
Nope.
Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Carries. Okay, anything else on that agenda item? Okay.
Ron? Chairman Reisner. I don't want to muddy the waters, but look over the list again. Make sure you have general boating, paddling, sailing in there. You talk about recreational and commercial fishing. Just look it over. Maybe I didn't catch it, but
What did you say?
look your list over, your laundry list. Just general boating, paddling, sailing. I didn't see any. Someone just wants to go motor around. I didn't. Just
Okay.
Recreational.
So Gene, would you
Voting.
like to, and if your second is willing, well, actually, it requires, we already moved on this, so
I'll just do a new one
we do a new motion.
to add that on.
Do a
if
new
you want
motion to add to this laundry list here, recreational and commercial boating on the bay.
I'll make a recommendation that we...
Wait a sec. Is that what you had, just a second, is that what you had in mind?
Well, I just seem to be missing to me.
Is that sufficiently inclusive? I mean, you thought about this,
Yes.
so, okay. So recreational and commercial boating on the bay.
I'll make a motion that we revise the previous motion and include recreational boating
I saw it.
and... What was that? Recreational boating and...
Recreational and commercial.
Recreational and commercial boating.
Recreational boat fishing is already in it.
It says commercial fishing, not floating.
I think you're safe with recreational and commercial boating.
The harbor director's point is that there's general boating that takes place on the bay, and that's a good point.
Okay.
And it's both recreational. We could just say all boating. You can just say boating, for that matter, I suppose. You don't have to
Boating on the bay.
boating on the bay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
Do we need to include paddling as such, or
I think that's recreational boating.
Okay, just making sure.
Any other discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. Carries. Okay, so we added, just give me a second here. Lori, we'll help each other with this. Okay. So, okay. All right, that brings us to Category D, Declaration of Future Agenda Items. And before I entertain from the board whether they would like to declare any future agenda items, we're just to go down the list. Goals and objectives, working waterfront designation, and the next one, Measure D. We're working on that now. I think we've just addressed that to some degree tonight. Although when we had Measure D on the list, it was because of the the board was interested in clarifying the apparent inconsistencies and ambiguities in that language, and we have not addressed that. So that's unresolved. Back Bay water use forum, I would suggest that we put that on the September agenda, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Okay, and deliberation on paid parking on the Embarcadero and adjacent vicinities will be on the July agenda. So I would encourage the board members to prepare themselves for that. I will reach out to the city and request prior studies, and I'm only aware of one, and there's got to be more than one. There's a whole room full of them up there. Gene?
At one time, when Dean Tyler was involved here, he went up and down and talked to all the lease owners, and he asked them how they felt about the parking. And that was very informational.
Was it reduced to any kind of report or anything? Shall we
Synopsis meetings,
shall we
minutes somewhere.
invite Dean to public comment?
Yeah, that's a little hard to do.
He passed away.
Oh, I was thinking about his John. Oh, yeah, sorry. Dean, we need your help, buddy. Reach out and touch us. Do you have any suggestions as to how to reprise that information?
Ask Bertha.
Yeah.
Ask Bertha. She has it. Jeremiah, you know Bertha, right?
Yeah.
Could you ask her? Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then the last item that's been declared so far is on the list is explore benefits of becoming a harbor or a port district. That can be agendized anytime in the fall if the board so determines to do that. So any additional future agenda items that anybody on the board would like to declare at this time?
You were talking about National Estuary Programs, State of the Bay. Is that coming up, or?
It is coming up, and it depends on what Lexi comes back with. If she wants to do July or September, they're unavailable in August. And that'd be about a 30-minute presentation.
We'll get Bohm next month.
I'm waiting. The director is the one who has the direct communication, and I'm waiting to hear from the director as to what Bohm has to say about when they're ready to come back.
Yeah, the indication was they asked about a July meeting, and if it's available. It was a death in somebody's family, a funeral they had to run off to, so. But they asked about July, so I'm assuming they're thinking July. But I'll continue to follow up on that.
Sure, because we don't have to lock that agenda in until the week prior to the July meeting.
Well, as long as we don't get the technician who is trying to push his website, we'll learn something or other. If you'd gone to the county supervisor meeting, they had the technician who was promoting his website, and it was informative, but we needed a YouTube video to show us how to work it. So.
Well, we have this body has a policy that we are not marketed. We had such an experience not too long ago, so we don't do that. Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, motion to Gene?
One more question. I should have said
Sure.
from the very beginning. State of California just last week passed a fishing regulation that when you buy your license, it'll be for a total year, not July to July or September to September. I mean, December to December. It'll be when you buy it, then you get a full year's worth of fishing license.
So it's not calendar anymore.
Yeah, it used to
No.
be calendar, January
Right.
to December.
Yeah. Now it'll be when you buy it, you've got a full year's worth of fishing license.
Great, I haven't bought mine yet.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Bill? Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None? Carries. Thank you.